I love that Richard Dawkins' suggestion for replacing religious community is golf.
Simply play golf with all your wealthiest 5 closest atheist friends. Hello?
We haven't done an edited video in ages because we're live streamers now.
That's right. Recorded videos are just a thing of the past. Everything is now. In the now, baby. Now Dowen. Well, thanks for allowing me, a commoner, to come onto the channel with you, number 9 of the Philosophy Substack.
Guys, I don't want the vibe of you towards me to change simply because I'm the 9th most important philosopher on Substack. Treat me the same. Success comes and goes. What's a thing a philosopher said about that?
I post, therefore I am.
Right, I've always said that.
Well, I've just been enjoying The Sopranos, but I won't go into it today. I got all my Sopranos bits out during the live stream so that I can keep it to a minimum.
But it's still a high obsession for you.
Yeah, you still are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
And that's Tony Soprano and his mates.
Yeah, his mates and this therapist.
What season are you on?
3 now.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many are there?
4. So it's getting there.
Well, then we're going to have to watch Gilmore Girls.
Yeah.
And The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives is coming back.
Or is it back? That. Yeah, it might be. I think it's
out.
Back. Wow.
You loved that 1.5 episodes you watched last time.
I loved all 1 episode. Yeah, it was interesting and don't know if I can do anymore. But it is a game changer for the big platforms who are like, oh, people like watching Mormon content. Let's throw a bunch of money at it.
Yeah.
How about you guys? Do you love Mormon content?
Do you want to join our Patreon? You can throw money at it. Today we're doing something that isn't explicitly Mormon. We're reading an article from the New York Times, and it is called Americans Haven't Found a Satisfying Alternative to Religion. So it is written by an ex-Mormon.
Oh.
Interesting. Lauren Jackson. We will leave a link to the article in the description box. So basically this woman, Lauren, starts out by telling us that she used to be Mormon and she used to get up in testimony meeting and say that she knew it was all true. She said, I knew the potency of believing, really believing that I had a certain place in the cosmos, that I was eternally loved, that life made sense, or that it would one day. I had all that and left it all. And then she talks about how she'd never really wanted to leave Mormonism, which I think a lot of ex-Mormons can relate to, even if they're thrilled that they did later down the road. She said she wasn't interested in exile, familial, cultural, or spiritual, but my curiosity pulled me away from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and toward a secular university. There I tried to be both religious and cool, believing but discerning. I didn't see any incompatibility between those things, but America's intense ideological polarity made me feel as if I had to pick. That's interesting. Just as an insight, the idea that maybe people are leaving religion precisely because religions have become so polarized and, determined to embody one side of this extreme spectrum.
Yeah, I feel like anecdotally, a lot of the post-Christians that I've met were just like, oh, I just was raised reading these, morals or ideas from the Bible and about what love and kindness and goodness is, only to see the church itself and the people in the church and the pastors and leaders all completely defying those principles and throwing them under the bus in favor of MAGAism or whatever. And just being like, yep, that's not for me. That's not. Christianity doesn't pass its own test for a lot of people.
Yeah, I saw a Substack article the other day that said, if Christianity is so great or God is so loving, why are Christians the meanest people on the internet? And I was like, there's something to that. They're not all like that, but.
Reading Slaughterhouse-Five, where he talks about how you never want to kill a well-connected person, and that's like Christianity was like, oh yeah, they killed Jesus because they thought he was a nobody, but he was actually really well-connected. He was the Son of God, and that has given Christians the right to kill anybody who's not well-connected for the sake of Christianity. Yeah. And so because they're not connected the way that Christians are to God, then it's fine. And yeah, not all Christians always, obviously. Like, there's ones who are embodying it and really trying to do the thing. And there are progressive congregations and organizations. But yeah, you don't need us to convince you of the state of Christianity. You just hop on literally any social media app and interact with any random.
It's creatine and weightlifting for Jesus. That's a lot of it.
Or sitting on your ass and hate commenting all day at people you don't know or desire to understand.
We must fight
for Christ. Yeah.
So Lauren said, my story maps onto America's relationship to religion over the last 30 years. I was born in the mid-90s, the moment that researchers say the country began a mass exodus from Christianity. Around 40 million Americans have left churches over the last few decades, and about 30% of the population now identifies as having no religion. People work to build rich, fulfilling lives outside of faith. That's what I did too. She talks about how she had this busy life where she volunteered, looked after nieces and nephews, went to workout classes, practiced mindfulness, went to therapy, visited saunas, and subscribed to meditation apps, book clubs, running clubs, read philosophy. But she said nothing has felt quite like that chapel in Arkansas, the one she grew up going, the Mormon one.
Oh, I kind of get the childhood nostalgia, but just had so many much better experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's but there does seem to be a percentage of people that still, like John DeLynn, who sent us this article, I feel like he still looks back on his time in Mormonism as like very fondly and with this sense that nothing has... Well, I think he would say that life is richer and more fulfilling now, but it seems like it's still this... there's a vacuum, there's a hole left by the Mormon church that nothing has quite been able to replace. And I wonder with that whether just the way some people's brains are or just the way humans are, it's like if you just give someone a specific familiar experience for long enough, if you take it away, it's just like there is always going to be that kind of longing for it. The same way that if you died, I wouldn't be ever fine about that. Like it would always feel like something was like gone that I had loved, but you just learn to live with that grief.
Yeah.
Maybe we should be seeing leaving our childhood religions with a little bit of that lens of like when somebody dies, like someone that's a big part of your life that you have like this big heart soul connection with is gone, you don't just replace them.
Yeah. And it's complicated when the person or thing that died was also manipulative and abusive in a lot of ways,
and a bit murderous,
and a bit lying and deceptive and all that. So it's complicated to have those feelings.
Yeah.
But I get it.
Mormonism does wire you for a very specific kind of community that to me was like fairly easy to let go of. I mean, there are things I appreciated about it, like moving to college in America. It obviously provided me with this safe, familiar landing place, so it didn't feel like I was going to this foreign land that I was an alien in.
Yeah, there's like a uniformity that's available kind of pretty much anywhere, and you can just kind of plug in and expect the type of community and relationships, know that there will be people around you that will like help out when you're sick or when you need to move, that'll be friendly and kind of share similar lifestyle.
There's a really set system for gaining status or, for fitting in. I feel like especially if you're a white man in Mormonism, I mean, there's just a certain status that you can pretty easily access within that system.
Yeah.
That is hard to lose for a lot of people.
But then like, I don't know, just making real friends and connecting with people based on a mutual affinity and regard.
Yeah.
Rather than just like, we happen to live within the same geographic region and attend the same religion and have like on paper some of the same beliefs. Therefore, we can interact on this very surface level and have these like little expressions of vulnerability and intimacy, but never dive down or dig deep into what's actually going on. It's not our individuality that's connecting us. It's our conformity, our ability to like adhere to this uniform system, which is way less fulfilling to me personally.
You can have the same beliefs as someone, but not the same values. Like you can have Mormons that technically believe all the same things, but in terms of like the ways that they prioritize compassion or curiosity or, a lot of these spiritual qualities, there's not necessarily that conformity. So I feel like people have different amounts that they crave conformity, and I think me and you are pretty high on the individuality side of the spectrum.
Definitely.
And I also do think us leaving the church at 22, 24 makes a big difference as well, because if you've raised a family in the Mormon church, it's a completely different sort of thing to sort of find your tribe after that. Even though it is interesting hearing from someone like John, because he's someone who has such a massive community that he's built where there is a lot of like heart, soul connectivity between people. And yet it still doesn't feel like quite enough sometimes.
Do you think he feels that way, that it's not quite enough?
I don't want to like
armchair psychoanalyze John
No,
Delaney.
I'm just going off of what he's sort of said, and yeah, so I'm trying to like represent him accurately. And sorry, John, if we're not. But I think he, as I said, would describe his life now as more fulfilling and better in all these ways. But I think he would also say that he still kind of misses. I mean, he's always talked about missing the structure of church. Like he tried to start a secular church in Logan and it just didn't really take off. And I think...
Because turns out we actually don't really want to sit around in meetings.
Yeah, like Logan is
if we don't feel like we have
hiking.
to.
But some people really do. I learned that in the corporate world. Some people love a meeting. They love asking a question when the Zoom was just about to end.
Read the room, Karen. Read the Zoom.
Read the Zoom. America's secularization was an immense social transformation. Has it left us better off? People are unhappier than they've ever been, and the country is in an epidemic of loneliness. It's not just, I always have such an issue when just like that immediate correlation. I'm like, do we have to do this? Yeah, I'm like,
there's a whole set of reasons that's unrelated to the dwindling of America.
To talk about the economy?
You're talking about the problems of capitalism, that everything in our society is based upon commodification, and friendship and love and belonging isn't something that you can buy. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, it's going to be hard to find that in a hyper-capitalistic society where religion, commodified spirituality, and commodified community is available.
And people in religion are unhappy too.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, like, happiness data relies on self-reporting, and there's a lot of layers of ways that religion can train you to be kind of estranged from yourself and to portray yourself as someone who's very happy, to report that you're very happy, maybe even to genuinely believe that you're really happy, when actually
maybe
you're like,
even the only happy people.
Yeah. So there's a lot there, but we'll keep reading.
Yeah, and it's like, if there is what is the miracle on 34th Street? What's better? A lie that draws a smile or a truth that draws a tear? And I'm like, that's really stupid. Give me the truth. Like, I don't care. Like,
yeah.
Like, no, don't base our legal system or the plot of this movie on lies. Like, I don't want to hear just a convenient lie that's like, that's just way better, easier for you to deal with. I'm like,
a lot of people do.
A lot of people do, because life is hard and life is mysterious and life is chaotic and subject to forces far beyond our control, and it's terrifying.
Yeah.
And it is easier, and oftentimes, at least on the surface, you can just walk through if you're like, I don't have to worry about any of that because there's somebody who's going to take care of it all for me someday, at least right now in this moment, and someday. It's just like, I'm just going to not worry about it. Yeah, that's probably easier for a lot of people in a lot of ways. Maybe not at certain moments, and maybe there's, times where that all comes crumbling down and then you really got to deal with that shit. But I get the appeal, I guess.
Yeah, and I think radical honesty is like a spiritual principle that I find to be like very valuable and like anchoring, and that's kind of central to my approach to life. And I think we all in our lives have to sort of peel back these layers of delusion that we have, because we don't want to face the truth about ourselves, reality, like whatever it is, because there's all kinds of levels on which we tell ourselves comforting lies, basically. And I think it does take kind of a spiritual maturity to be able to look at reality more truthfully. And then there tends to be, I know I always bring up that Khalil Gibran quote that's like, the deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. I think that's really true, but I think it's not necessarily obvious to people prior to having experienced it. Like it takes kind of a lot of like potentially awareness and time and deconstruction to realize that confronting suffering, look at the story of the Buddha, right? It's like he finally confronted suffering. Like he was protected in this golden palace, perfectly comfortable, not aware of suffering. And yet his greatest joy came on the other side of facing that suffering without any stories. Or there is major cat beef going on in this house and there has been for the last 3 weeks. And I just don't know what's going to change it.
Hey guys, let's keep it civil, okay?
So one of the issues I have with religion and with this conversation about, does it make people happier or less happy to be secular, to be religious? I just don't really like the question at its core, because really I'm fraught. Like, is truth not, truth to me is such a primary spiritual principle that I want to find a truthful way to be. happy.
And you know, that's biblical. Look at that. Remember that scripture we read in Ecclesiastes that's like, I searched all my life for wisdom and I found it, and it's all vanity and it's all shitty and it's all suffering and it's all terrible. The more I've learned, the more miserable I've become. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure there's different schools of thought that I do tend to think deeper sorrow, greater joy. That seems to be true. But yeah, I don't know. It's also especially frustrating when just looking at, should we be religious? Can we be happy without it? It's like the question of how people are being harmed by religious systems just feels like so secondary to that in that conversation, when I'm like, that's primary.
Right.
Like me believing, when you believe a comforting lie and the fact that you believe it hurts others, like that's a problem.
Yeah.
We can't just come at everything from like, does this make me happy or unhappy?
Yeah. Ask any drug addict if it makes them happy or not. And
Right.
it's like, well, yeah, it can make you happy. Why do you think people do it? Because it feels good.
Yeah. And we're not suggesting that all religion is like, there's obviously forms of religion that we could be on board with, and there are sort of universalists in every religion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll get into it as we progress on, but it's like, what is religion doing? What are the needs that it's addressing? What are the desires that it's fulfilling?
That's the
and
thing.
how do you get that in the modern age?
I think a lot of people
They're going at each other like Catholics and Protestants. Bernie's the Catholic, obviously.
On the one hand, people can often struggle after leaving religion to find an appropriate replacement of the community, of the meaning, of the structure, of the kind of sense of containment of the humanity that I think is kind of a weird draw for a lot of people. But then I also feel like there's like a lot of the time people miss their past lives in religion because it was a more innocent time, you know, for the same reason that a lot of people will miss their childhoods. And it's like, you can't go back, you know, some things just need to be grieved and let go of. And obviously, again, religion is so broad and can be so many things, so that you don't have to just like let go of religion.
Right.
But I think trying to recapture that feeling of like naive innocence is impossible. So you need to kind of like make your peace with that. And sometimes I think people leave religion and then they almost try to recapture it in ways that aren't actually like helpful or realistic, and they should instead be, you know, it's fine to focus on like the other things, like how can I build community, blah, 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 blah.
We've all met the ex-Mormon guy who just started smoking weed and is like, what if we created the perfect church with the real and I'm like, no, come on, please.
Yes.
How about not?
And everyone thinks they've just had some iconoclastic idea that no one's ever tried. I'm like, if John DeLynn couldn't pull it off.
Yeah, I mean, it's like exactly like you said, of being like, oh, I was so happy as a child believing in Santa Claus and waking up on Christmas Day and finding presents, and I doubt the author's like, we need to go back. Everyone just needs to go back to church. I doubt that that's the intention there. We are truly just
springboarding from what we've read so far.
Yeah, but you know, that's the same. It's like, are people happy after they stop believing in Santa Claus? Maybe we've got a Santa Claus problem on our hands, and it's like, that's not really the issue.
Like, are people more unhappy after they realize how many wars are going on in the world? Like, it's just like really valid to again, like individual happiness. While I am like I want as many people to be happy as possible, we just gotta be careful with that one.
And a lot of countries would look at us and be like, even y'all's obsession with being happy is like actually neurotic, and you think too much of yourself. Yeah.
I've always said this, but Jeffrey R. Holland was so based when he quoted that thing about how happiness is like a butterfly. If you try and chase it, that's not going to work. You need to let it land gently on your shoulder.
You just notice it.
And that is like, what a mindful Zen king for him to have said that, because it's so true. It's like when you just kind of create the peace and stillness and space for the butterfly to land on your shoulder. But when it's there, if you're thinking the whole time about how you can hold on to it, that's also going to ruin your experience.
Yeah, that's kind of the Zen and and sorry, I don't know what the word is. It's a Zen koan that's like, if you are seeking happiness or contentment, then you'll never find it, because happiness is the state of having the thing, of not having desire, of not needing to seek, because you're content, you have everything that you need. So by looking for it, you've already precluded yourself from being able to experience it, because you've put yourself in the experience of seeking, and seeking isn't it. It's like having of being. And so it really is more about cultivating internal gratitude and awareness than it is this like, oh, I need all my external circumstances to change so that I can feel this way. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes things in the external world do need to change and will make you happier. And a lot of times it's in the form of money, as much as we hate to say it.
Yep, as much as
A
we
little
hate
chunk
to
of
plug
money
the
would.
Patreon. I do think because Western society is often so spiritually bankrupt, to be frank, a lot of people do still, consciously or subconsciously, like confuse temporary highs or like experiencing highs with happiness. I mean, I know that in Mormonism, I would have these big euphoric spiritual sort of experiences, moments in church every so often, and those would be kind of like the thing I was always chasing, like that big spiritual high. And then obviously when we left religion and you learn more about the brain and just, you know, how religious experiences can really like mimic taking drugs. Is that the right analogy?
Yeah, totally. Same brain circuitry that's being activated. Yeah,
it makes a lot click. And I do feel like the older I get and the more spiritually healthy I am, the more like happiness is like this quality of like peace and contentment and noticing the little things. I mean, it really is like, you know, like Zen just as a whole is just about like noticing the little things and whatever you're doing, being fully with it. Like that really there's something really true about that.
Yeah, I feel that. The chop wood, carry water. I mean, I don't all the time. I don't exist in this perfect like Zen enlightenment constantly, but but oftentimes, especially in the spring.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, you like look outside.
Me
and
talking in the spring on YouTube versus me in the winter, just suddenly like happiness is easy.
Yeah.
It's the bird on your windowsill.
Yeah, exactly. And in the winter, I'm
depression is a choice.
Consciousness is a scourge that was never intended. We're a freak accident.
We're a channel that honors seasons and honors cycles. And so if you suddenly and unexpectedly feel joy, lean into it, Mary Oliver.
Yeah, suddenly and unexpectedly every April, I'm like, whoa, actually life is so easy. And all you have to do is go outside and notice the beauty of nature constantly surrounding us and always available for our sensory delight. We are the universe moving in ecstatic motion. I am the sensory perception of the universe, the organ of delight and ecstasy in this corpus universal that we get to abide in.
Brilliant. So Lauren, to her credit, says, it's not just secularism that's to blame, but those without religious affiliation in particular rank lower on key metrics of well-being. They feel less connected to others, less spiritually at peace, and they experience less awe and gratitude regularly. I think that makes sense. I think also just there's sort of a standard deviation of humans in terms of like how self-directed we are with our spirituality. And a lot of people just like need the direction of going to a church every week and being reminded of matters of higher importance or of the heart. And then because not everyone has that kind of like personal, not everyone's a poet.
Yeah.
That's kind of the point.
Yeah. I mean, like, you know, there's something so cool about meeting people where you share a natural affinity or a mutual interest, but not everyone is even like as outgoing or has the same interests as everybody else. And that one size fits all of religion is kind of nice where, you know, someone who really struggles socially can show up and know that they'll at least just be welcomed and are part of it. And it's not because they have to be the most liked, interesting person in the world in order to associate with some group or whatever. They can just be there and everyone can just be there. And that is nice. Mm-hmm. And I, again, see the appeal.
Yeah. And I know a lot has been said about this, but the lack of third spaces in America, like even the fact that there's not even these days like a high street that people just kind of walk down, congregate in parks adjacent to shops. Like America just a lot of the time doesn't have that. And that really makes a big difference to your sense of well-being. Like when I'm back in England, I'm always just surprised at how much more uplifted and grounded and like safe and part of something I feel, even like walking through the city, because there's just something about it that brings people together that you don't get from American strip malls and
the urban sprawl.
The general infrastructure here
suburban sprawl
is kind of just a bad vibe a lot of the time.
Oh yeah.
Though there are some places
there are
not that way. Now the country seems to be revisiting the role of religion. Secularism is on pause in America, a study from Pew found this year.
By official declaration of the government, we're pausing secularism.
This is a major generational shift. People are no longer leaving Christianity. Other major religions are growing. Almost all Americans, 92% of adults, both inside and outside religion, say they hold some form of spiritual belief in a god, human souls, or spirits, an afterlife, or something beyond the natural world. I mean, I feel like I'd fall in that 92% too. Like, it's a pretty low bar just to say you have some form of spiritual belief.
Yeah.
Or like connection to something beyond the natural, you know?
Yeah. You don't, obviously spirituality is not religion. Those, you know, there's a difference.
I wonder the makeup of the 8% that say they just don't feel any of that. That must be just people that are hardcore, hardline atheists. I'd love to know the gender breakdown of that 8%.
Yeah.
And other things.
Yeah. Give me all the stats. I want all the info.
Yeah. Also, it's good that society has a variety of brain types and personality types, you know, and it's probably good to have some people in society that just don't have any kind of magical thinking at all. I mean, it's probably impossible to completely get away from it, but you know, it's probably useful to have that 8%. And I don't really like conversations where we're seeking to be like, what's the good? Is the 92% the good percent, or is the 8% the good? Like, there's no like right or wrong here. It's just like, yeah, we all got to find a sense of spirituality that works for us.
Yeah, and this could all just be semantics, you know, like someone who's like, I am not a spiritual person at all. I probably have a lot in common with someone who would identify as completely non-spiritual.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'd be like, oh yeah, that's me too. I just use different words because spirituality is more convenient, more well understood. And if we have a conversation, I can go into what that actually means. And same thing with like God. It's like, no, I don't believe that there's a, you know, white, bearded, circumcised polygamist living near a planet, on a planet near the star called Kolob, but like, do I believe that this universe exists?
But if that is true, wouldn't you rather
like,
just live it just in case?
Just if it makes me happy, if I don't have to think about suffering, my own suffering or the suffering of others, I can just assume that God's taking care of it. Then, yeah, that is easier. But you know, I do feel like a strong connection with God. That is to say, the full universe. I see my individual consciousness as a function, or like, you know, a little fractal of this larger function and this larger fractal pattern that's just playing out the way that it is. And it is through like my intentional noticing of that and like feeling into the reality of that leads me toward more happiness of like looking out the window and being like, wow, what a privilege to be conscious in this moment and all moments. Like, breathe in, like, wow, for the rest of eternity, I won't be able to do that. But for this brief flicker of time, I get to see and I get to pet Banksy and I get to listen to music and dance. And, you know, that is spirituality to me. And that's my relationship with God, the great other that is also me. Yeah.
I also find
Are we getting too spiritual too?
No, this is exactly what I wanted for this episode. I think there's also, I mean, something you hear from Mormons a lot, like when you ask them sort of like, you know, do you not have a problem with the fact that Joseph Smith married teenage girls, stuff like that, is they'll say, yeah, I know there's issues, but like this makes me happy. So even if it's not true, I'd rather live it.
Or even if there's problems that I don't want to understand.
Yeah, because that's the thing. What they're really saying is, this story makes me feel safe. I'm terrified to lose it. And also humans naturally fear loss more than we like are interested in pursuing gain, you know? So there's not this sense when you're in something like that, especially because the nature of a religion like Mormonism is such that it's deliberately made you scared of the outside world. So you're not looking at it through the lens of like, what's my day-to-day happiness actually like in this system? And is there a chance it could be higher outside of it? You know, you're just kind of running on this theory that has been instilled in you by the doctrines that you would be less happy outside of it, and that you need to obviously protect your belief in it at all costs.
Totally.
So she just talks about how basically like religion's kind of back, and obviously President Trump claims God saved him from a bullet so he could make America great again. The Supreme Court has the most pro-religion justices since at least the 50s. Nearly half of Americans believe the United States should be a Christian nation. That's interesting, nearly half. I wonder what people think that means.
I think I know everything I need to know on the subject.
Well, nearly half, because I'm like, nearly half of Americans aren't like radical Christians who are zealous every single day about it. So I'm kind of curious, maybe they just have this sense that like, well, Christianity's always been like the biggest religion in this country and it should kind of stay that way because that's what I'm used to. And even if they're not like massively Christian or massively devoted to Christianity in their daily lives, it like says more to them than like they wouldn't want the country to become a Muslim country or something. Like maybe that's how they're thinking about the question in their minds. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and if you think that Christianity is like the perfect embodiment of justice and truth and goodness, then it's like, yeah, of course it would be great if everybody in the country was on the same page and we were all trying to live these Christ-like principles and all adhering. And
'cause that's the thing. Every Christian in America has a different sense of like who Christ was, what a Christian nation would look like. I don't know if half of Americans want the 10 Commandments recited in schools. Like maybe it doesn't
I bet
mean
there's
that.
a pretty solid number of that 50% that does. Because that's the thing is Christianity has had preferential treatment, and in their minds they're like, if we were a Christian country, then Christianity is so good that we could let other people practice as they will or whatever, because that could be a tenet of Christianity. You know, some of the more moderate people.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of how like
that's how like my family would probably
it's
think
not like
about
50% of the country wants no other religion to be like allowed to be practiced.
Right.
I would hope.
But they kind of do. Like, again, because it's like, oh yeah, the 10 Commandments should be in the courthouse and in schools, but we shouldn't have pride flags because that's something different. Christianity is the way that God wants it. And so obviously this would be like good and just, and anything else is just an abomination. But it's like you don't realize that what you actually want isn't equality. You want preferential treatment, and that like just opens the door for all the civilizational calamities of the last 5,000 years of human history or whatever. That's like that's why Americans originally came here, was to escape all the religious bullshit and violence that was going on in Europe, because they were like, fuck this.
But I've also heard that I've heard other people talking about
not to mention also economic labor and cheap.
But weren't the founding fathers also in another sort of way kind of zealots?
I mean, some are, they obviously aren't all in agreement. They were a very, I almost said diverse bunch. They were all rich white guys.
I mean, to their credit, we can all see that the Church of England is not like God's one true church on the church.
Yeah.
Not that I think they're really claiming or trying to be, although maybe.
But they were there was a lot of deists among them who were, they're not Christians, as it were. They're probably closer to atheists, but you couldn't be an open atheist at that time.
Do you think there was any James Fowler stage 6 baddies among the founding fathers?
I'd say Franklin was probably a 5.
Decent. If we could just have a few more
sleeping
fives
with
at
Parisian floozies and living a bohemian intellectual life, but I don't know if that translated to like universal love of humanity and that kind of business.
Did he love the floozies,
He loved that was the death of him actually. He died of syphilis.
I really don't know a lot about. I love that Grimes gets a mention in this, and the singer
great.
Grimes recently said, "I think killing God was a mistake."
God, I fucking hate everything that comes out of Grimes'
I struggle with Grimes, I really do.
No. Oh, I think it was such a mistake. What about marrying Elon? How about that? Like,
Well, legally she can't say that, probably. So maybe she's like, if we still had God, then Elon wouldn't be able to be becoming God in the same way. Who's to say?
I say this as an entertainer pretending to be intellectual. I hate entertainers that pretend to be intellectuals.
I know. Grimes giving my Substack.
she's gonna be up there soon. I guarantee it.
Even in the institutions where conservatives are sure that elite liberals are indoctrinating youth with godlessness, something is changing. I have served as a chaplain at Harvard for 25 years, and the interest in and openness to religion and spirituality has never been higher on campus, said Tammy McLeod, the president of the Harvard Chaplains.
I wonder if she's related to Kevin MacLeod, who does all the YouTube license-free music.
Really?
Yeah, sorry, a little talking shop.
Like the disappointing apostate younger brother.
Grimes. Did you see that thing of Grimes where she was like, when Elon was, fully chainsawing, she was like, wow, some people really misled me. I thought they had like these like democratic ideals and or egalitarian ideals, but I was deceived. And is like, you married the richest fucking man on earth thinking he was like a utopian egalitarian? Come on.
Was he the richest man on earth?
Doesn't matter. He was still like the literal bourgeoisie, and doing a fucking Das Kapital photo shoot just to spite your ex-lover doesn't make you
that was
number
a hell
9
of a
on
revenge,
Substack.
Revenge PR.
It was, yeah.
So basically, Lauren talks about how she's interviewed hundreds of people about this topic, including hearing from more than 4,000 Times readers who responded to a survey.
Also, that being said, I will go home and listen to Grimes. Like, I'm going to do it. So,
and if I didn't just say this, the Matt Bernstein episode on Grimes is really good and interesting. That's where I learned everything I know about Grimes. Many of the demographers, psychologists, sociologists, and statisticians I spoke to offered the same explanation. Americans simply haven't found a satisfying alternative to religion. For all the real attractions of life outside of institutional faith, autonomy, time back, and a choose-your-own-adventure adulthood, there are important benefits that have been lost. Just before we get quite into this, it's like in a society where the economy is like making a lot of people struggle constantly, and, you know, the healthcare system is brutal, and just generally people's needs aren't taken care of very much. Like we're kind of like prone to asking a lot more of religion. It's like there's a lot of things that I think we're like, oh, if only I had a religion. But it's like, yeah, people are probably turning towards that because like material reality is not providing for them.
yeah.
So like, yeah, then humans will turn to more magical thinking or spiritual thinking to kind of cope.
Totally.
Which is not bad, but it's just like, yeah, I don't know. I do wonder if we're asking. The problem is not religion as I see it. And it seems like we're kind of looking to religion to fix something that's like, you know?
Yeah, no, this is just recession vibes. And we talk about the God of the gaps as being the placeholder for our limited understanding that like, oh yeah, when humans didn't know we lived on a globe, God was this way. And then as we've, learned a little bit, our idea of God changes, and there's always those gaps in understanding. That's always where God lives, and God is always shrinking as we increase in knowledge. But it's not just knowledge. It's also like you said, in our resources and abilities, and like the God of the gaps of healthcare. It's like if you can't afford healthcare and you can't afford to see a doctor,
get a priest a blessing, because you never know.
Yeah, what else are you gonna do besides like maybe seek out an alternative method of healing? And if something is offering that, like what other choice do you have if you can't simply afford it? And that's why I listen to those like subliminal gum healing binaural beats to sleep because I can't fucking afford it.
It's the only way to regrow gums, Tanner.
Yep, you cannot otherwise.
I've said it before, but when I was in 10 out of 10 pain in the Costa Rican jungle with my ovarian cyst that I didn't know was an ovarian cyst, I said a prayer to a vaguely Christian God that kind of lives in my psyche still. Because when people are down bad, they're willing to try more things without there necessarily being evidence for them. And again, I'm not like painting this with like a negative brush universally, but it's like well documented that when people are vulnerable and struggling, they turn to religion. They turn to...
And the fun trick about the human brain is that sometimes it works. Like the placebo is real. And, that act of surrender also allows our body to relax and to be in a more like healthy state rather than our like clenching, scared, the fearful body state that aggravates our like internal well-being.
There's also something to be said about how religions like Mormonism almost make people less spiritually creative. Again, because you get so used to everything sort of being handed to you, and it's such an obedience and sort of like avoiding punishment based religion. So there's like definitely cultures around the world where there's more kind of, people just have more individual and collective creativity about like the rituals that they do that bring them together and connect them to their higher values. And that's like what's been such a joy for me about spirituality after religion that I would never have expected while in it. Because while you're in it and you have like such fixed answers, you can't fathom the value of embracing not knowing or embracing mystery. We're a culture that's bad at accepting mystery, basically. And so we flatten it with these stories. And it's beautiful when you go beyond religion that you can embrace that mystery, and there's a lot to be discovered there that you wouldn't have been able to discover when that story was covering everything. But it's like, how do we show people that?
Yeah, you kind of don't do it till you have to.
Yeah.
Mystery is even vilified in the Bible, at least. Like I think it's the whore of Babylon in the book of Revelation that either her name is mystery or has like the word mystery on her forehead or some shit. Or the beast she's riding on is like, my name's mystery.
When really mystery is just like that which is not known.
Yeah.
And
which we know nothing as humans.
To demonize that which is not known is kind of a terrifying sentiment.
You're just supposed to pretend like you know it all, and what you don't know, God knows, and you just know that he knows, and that's good enough. But mystery is so beautiful and is a doorway to awe. There's like a humility to observing something that's beyond your comprehension, beyond your control. Like, that's why you look up into the stars and you're like, oh my God, we're so fucking small. We're tiny. And something about that is like deeply inspiring. We love to be tiny.
She talks about reading The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins in middle school, and how Richard Dawkins kind of brought suspicion on religion in a new way. And by 2021, about 30% of America identified as nuns, people that have no religious affiliation, not the fun, not the cool outfit kind.
This article, I did read some of it earlier, and maybe we'll get into it. I forgot which point made me think about it, but I was thinking about monastic living and kind of going through, I might even have some screenshots I can go to, but just thinking about that, I'm like, well, that's basically describing my life, except for I'm allowed to fuck and they're not because of some rule back in the day that they wanted to have the clergy not be able to pass on property and wealth, just one of those classic political religious schemes that went on back in the day.
And now it's God's
will. Yeah.
If you don't have any,
but I'm like, oh, a group of people who like live together and garden and work on art and study things and are like tending to their inner world. I'm like, bro,
and
I'm doing that.
a lot about philosophy and what it means to be a person with like integrity and goodness in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that is something that our daily lives are like very focused on. Not in an arseholey way. But so there's something called the secularization thesis, which was an idea initially posited by someone called Max Weber, which holds that a society's modernization and economic development leads to the decline of religion. The Brookings Institution said churches were in their twilight hour. The Washington Post speculated about when Protestant churches would be empty. This was the 2021 period. That makes sense because, I mean, are people in Sweden going back to Christianity right now?
I don't think so.
I haven't heard that they are. So yeah, that does. I do think like economics play a big role in how religious people are.
For sure. This is education.
So it's talking about how a lot of people began identifying as spiritual but not religious. In 2015, researchers at Harvard began studying where Americans were turning to express their spiritualities. The answers were things like yoga, CrossFit, Soul Cycle, supper clubs.
What is a supper club? I want to belong to a supper club.
I think it's just like throwing dinner parties with your friends, which
I guess I belong to supper clubs.
Amazing, yeah. Meditation. Oprah tried sound baths. Gwyneth Paltrow advertised energy healing. More than a third of American women under 30 have downloaded the personal astrology app CoStar and deleted it 17,000 times and then re-downloaded it in a moment of curiosity and texted their mum again and asked what hour they were born. Secularization in the West was not about the segregation of belief from the world, but the promiscuous opening of belief to the world, said Ethan H. Shagan, a historian of religion at the University of California. It's basically saying like, as Americans were losing religion, they're embracing more of these other things like CrossFit, Soul Cycle, it's in the name.
Yeah. Hey, Soul Cycle.
This is like the kind of thing that is like mocked, like the idea that like your spirituality could be Soul Cycle. But I think it's completely valid, like pushing your body to its limits in a group setting where there's like an inspiring leader that is essentially teaching you self-discipline and like determination and grit and all things that I think are valuable spiritual values that even Christians would agree. Like it's good to like discipline yourself and become more able to endure pain in certain ways if it's going to do your body good. And then a lot of the time in Soul Cycle, you're hearing inspiring messages. You're doing this like ritual, this difficult ritual with other people.
Yeah.
I just think there's something lovely about that.
There is. I'd say that there probably is a need, especially in societies that have leaned Christian, a need for rituals that, because again, it's like religion taps on certain needs, like or desires, and that's why it exists, because it does those things, gives us a sense of community, belonging, all that sort of thing, a sense of comfort and ease and intellectual ease. But then there's also like rituals of atonement and grief and forgiveness that I think is like a really strong outlet for people. And gives people a lot of intellectual, emotional closure that you do this thing and you acknowledge the ways that you've done poorly and that you want to do better, and you're seen with others in that, and allowing yourself to feel that relief, like it's been taken care of and you don't have to hold on to it forever. I think those things are really important, like psychologically very beneficial for us. And I do think we still need to find ways to experience that in a way that like maybe something like a, athletic club may not reach us on that level, even though it can give it, for a lot of people, it could meet all, like a lot of the basic needs of just like being surrounded by friends or, people and activating your body and all that stuff. But there is also a level deeper that I think we can go and that is beneficial to go. And when I've gone there, I've been like, oh shit, this is like, I need this. I need to soul cycle. Yeah. No, I need to, like I think about like some of the grief ceremonies that I've participated in, where there's like an area where people are dropping in water, and that represents their grief and what they're holding, and everyone's adding to it. Doing a symbolic act for sharing that and performing that personal and collective alchemy. Still needed, I think, and that's probably the point of this whole thing.
I do think religion has typically been how people learn to process grief, and then they just don't have a way to do it outside of religion.
Yeah.
Also, white women get shat on a lot for embracing various forms of like Eastern spirituality, like yoga. And there's some valid criticisms there, don't get me wrong. But it's also true, as a white woman who loves yoga, there's like so much growing up in Western culture where spirituality is very individualistic and often prosperity gospel-y, and it's like so huge when you discover these other more Eastern schools of thought that are more about interconnectedness and embracing mystery and all that. Like there's just so much good stuff there. So it makes complete sense that people would flock to those things once leaving religion. And I think there's obviously things to be sensitive about, but also I think that's nice. That's good. Like it's good that it's good to be drawn to a more Eastern way of thinking, honestly.
Yeah. Good balance for us.
I just think it's better.
Yeah.
So it's like, sometimes it makes me a bit sad how much, for example, the yogic white woman will be mocked, because it's just like, well, would you rather she just stayed in the Western frame? Like that's what you want her to do. And yet Yeah. Again, I'm speaking broadly, and obviously like rampant cultural appropriation can also exist. Lauren talks about how secular organizations tried to provide the same benefits of religion, but without any theology. And then says religion provides what sociologists call the 3 Bs: belief, belonging, and behaviors. It offers beliefs that supply answers to the tough questions of life. It gives people a place they feel they belong, a community where they are known, and it tells them how to behave, or at least what tenets shall guide their action. Religious institutions have spent millenniums getting really good at offering these benefits to people. The last few decades, much of the world has tried to go without God, a departure from most of recorded history. More than 1 billion people globally, and about 1/3 of Americans have tried to live without religion. And basically the data about how that's going doesn't look good, according to this piece. I do find the line interesting. It gives people a place where they belong, a community where they are known, because it's like the way that you're able to be known in religion is through a very specific lens.
Yeah, it's like you show up, therefore you are seen and known.
Which I think a lot of people find preferable to like a more intimate knowing of even themselves, let alone other people knowing them intimately.
Yeah.
Like I think there's just so much shame and self-loathing in Western culture that we would rather be known through several filters and know how to perform to be known in that way, and then get kind of the sense of belonging that feels good to the body without actually being known or knowing ourselves. Not true for everyone.
That's real. I mean,
that was my experience.
As a Mormon, I was constantly craving deeper connection, more like depth.
There is overwhelming empirical support for the value of being at a house of worship on a regular basis on all kinds of metrics: mental health, physical health, having more friends, being less lonely, said Ryan Burge, a former pastor and leading researcher on religious trends. Pew's findings corroborate that idea. Actively religious people tend to report they are happier than people who don't practice religion. Religious Americans are healthier too. They are significantly less likely to be depressed or to die by suicide, alcoholism, cancer, cardiovascular disease, or other causes. In a long-term study, doctors at Harvard found that women who attended religious services once a week were 33% less likely to die prematurely than women who never attended. That makes sense, right? We know that community is one of the biggest predictors of longevity. Religiously affiliated Americans are more likely to feel gratitude by 23 percentage points. That's interesting because I feel like even like Andrew Huberman talks about the scientifically backed benefits of gratitude these days. I feel like gratitude has become very mainstream.
Yeah, gratitude's great. And when you're religious, you can be grateful for stuff that today I wouldn't be grateful for. So that's fun.
Like what?
Oh, like being an American, being so wealthy, you know, we're so grateful to live in this land where we have so many freedoms and opportunities. And
I mean,
I am grateful. I literally am, but there's like a self-superiority that kind of comes through. Yeah, we're
grateful to be part of the one true church on the earth today. We're grateful to be God's favorite chosen special people.
Yeah, and despite all this connected to humanity business, it doesn't feel like religion has been a great unifier for most of human history. Religion is such a loose term that could be referring to like a 501c3 that, you know, is teaching you about Xenu or whatever, but it can also just be a system of rituals. And those rituals can be done by you, by friends. I mean, I go to like e-dance every week, and in a lot of ways, so that like is religious. You know, I go there with an intention, and I'm there processing emotion with other people who are processing and self-expressing. And then afterward, we get a chat, and there's like a little share thing where people are able to be vulnerable, and it's like that is fucking good. It does like really, really good for me. I feel much better when I do that. So yeah, there's something to it. But is it in my mind religious? No, because there's no one there like, you have to be here, you have to do, you know, the religion that I'm associated with, even though it could still fall under. Yeah. It's still hitting all these points.
I suppose the gratitude data just point to the fact that people need to be directed more to feel grateful. Like that's something that I'm like a real self-starter about, because it's it's evidence-based, and also I love it. And yeah, I liked that about Mormonism, that it encouraged gratitude. The fact that people like Andrew Huberman and other just sort of mainstream voices for science and psychology are talking about the benefits of gratitude, I suppose that is still relatively new. And a lot of people maybe are becoming peripherally aware that that's the case, but it's like one of those things of like, you know, that meditation would probably be good for you, but like, what's going to actually make you do it? I wonder, I mean, it seems like Americans having a deity that they love/fear seems to help them with actually like following through on a commitment to gratitude.
Yeah, and it's easier to do, pretty much everything is easier to do in the company of other people.
Yeah.
Like, you know that there's going to be other people there doing the same thing.
Religiously affiliated Americans are also more likely to feel spiritual peace by 27 points and a deep sense of connection with humanity by 15 points. That one I find interesting because Mormonism, I think, it made me more connected to a community, but I think it made me less connected to humanity because it was encouraging me to categorize people intensely as good or bad, or Mormon material, not Mormon material.
Totally.
It's obviously like casts a lot of judgment on the differences in human beings, the different ways they choose to live, even if they're not hurting anyone else. Again, there's a whole spectrum, but just because a religious person reports feeling a deep sense of connection with humanity.
I would have reported that. I would have been like, totally, too. I feel like deeply the love of Jesus for every single person on this planet. And like, that makes me want to go out there and serve and teach and share because I feel that. But really, I was doing exactly what you're saying, categorizing and judging. And
this is why like self-reported data is also just like always so questionable, because it's like, functionally, are you more deeply connected to people in this world, or are you just more intensely tribal within your own group? I don't know. The latter is particularly important. Positive relationships are the single most important predictor of well-being, according to the longest running study on human happiness in the world. This isn't true for everyone, of course. About a third of Americans who have left religion appear to be doing just fine, according to a new study from Burge, the former pastor and researcher. Many are civically engaged, find joy in nature, and spend time with their friends and families. Many non-religious people still enjoy time with their friends and families. Can you believe it?
Newsflash.
But in aggregate, the data shows that people without religion are faring worse than those who practice one.
Also, it is kind of frustrating to leave religion and to grow out of certain ideas that don't hold water, that are just overly simplistic or whatever, and then to still be living in a world where everybody else pretty much is operating as if that's real. It's like you realize Santa Claus wasn't real, but you still live in a society where everyone is like, what do you think Santa's going to get you for Christmas this year? Oh, you better be good. We better change the laws. Otherwise, Santa's going to be very angry and everyone's going to get coal. And by the way, we're bringing coal back.
Yeah, like it's hard to become exiled from the people that you were raised in community with. Like it sucks to become an outcast. That is going to have a lasting impact on a lot of people. But that's not necessarily an argument for religion. About a quarter of Americans told Pew that the pandemic strengthened their existing faith. The political scientists Ronald Inglehart and Pippa Norris have a theory to explain this. Religion flourishes in times of existential insecurity. There's plenty of evidence that people aren't just religious because of insecurity or instability. Highly educated people are more likely than people who attended only high school to go to religious services weekly. Additionally, Hindus, Jews, mainline Protestants, and Muslims are all more likely than religiously unaffiliated people to have at least a college degree. These are people who tend to have good jobs, higher incomes, and private healthcare. They are going to religious services because they're getting something they value out of it. Hindus, Jews, mainline Protestants, and Muslims are all more likely to have a college degree.
I would love to see the sampling here and be like, is this just Americans? Is this undergrads in a certain state? Is this...
Well, isn't it kind of a known thing that immigrants, for example, have families that are very determined for them to academically excel? Like that's really important when you're an immigrant because there's kind of a fundamental insecurity to being an immigrant. So you really feel the need to like knuckle down in a way that you perhaps wouldn't if you'd kind of always lived in this relatively stable system that you're still in. I don't know.
Yeah.
There might be something there. Also, highly educated people are more likely than people who attended only high school to go to religious services weekly. I guess I was just thinking about how Mormons tend to be like a pretty in America. Like Mormons are pretty wealthy. And so therefore, because they're wealthy, they're more likely to go to get higher education.
Yeah, and same with Christianity across the board. Like, I mean, you go to the South where like there's a huge concentration of Christians and a lot of them have intergenerational wealth that has been part of the white Christian culture down there that also has ties to slavery and the economic development from that exploitation.
There's also something to be said about it's kind of smart to be part of a religion if you're highly educated. Like if you want job opportunities, I mean, that was a nice thing about being Mormon. You could usually find someone to give you a job if you needed one.
There's a strong network and sometimes it's people's whole calling to like help people find jobs in the stake, which is cool. Like that's a cool mutual aid thing that they do.
Yeah. But I do think the point that Lauren is making is, I'm glad she brought it up. Like religion isn't for dumb people and then like smart people. Like that's not really what the data shows. Oh, a few weeks ago, she called Mr. Dawkins for this piece. And
that's too bad. I'm so over Richard Dawkins.
I wanted to know what he made of the fact that America's secularization has stagnated. He remained hopeful that secularism can replace religion.
Well, as you see, today there's not as many religious people, which allows people like me to write little...
I'm so over him.
It seems to me should be reasonably easy to sort out, he said. For ethics, he encouraged people to take civics classes and host a weekly discussion club. For community, play golf.
Simply play golf with all your wealthiest 5 closest atheist friends.
I love that Richard Dawkins' suggestion for replacing religious community is golf.
Have a little golf, swing a little club.
He said he understood that churches in particular could provide moral instruction and said he valued the ethical teachings of Jesus as a man, but he insisted people should be able to fulfill their spiritual desires outside of faith. It should be quite easy to show documentary films, David Attenborough films, Carl Sagan films, Neil deGrasse Tyson. There are lots of substitutes to spirituality that those can provide. He's got a really good point there because David Attenborough was a massive part of my reconstruction.
Yeah, do a Delta 9 gummy and then watch a David Attenborough doc and you will have a spiritual experience. You'll be like, oh shit, this is really nature unfolding in all its majesty and glory. What a joy to be a part of it.
There's so much untapped gratitude for not currently being chased by a predator that you just haven't even confronted and accessed until you've watched The Hunt by David Attenborough, Sir David Attenborough.
Did I send you that screenshot of a tweet that was like, at least once in a David Attenborough doc, he should stop to remind you that you will come down from this high?
Yeah, I sent you that one, didn't I?
Did.
Or maybe you did. In a country where most people are pessimistic about the future and don't trust the government, where hope is hard to come by, people are longing to believe in something. Religion can offer beliefs, belonging, and behaviors all in one place. It can enchant life. Most importantly, it tells people that their lives have a purpose. And then she talks about how people want community. She then quotes a 37-year-old woman in New York called Erin, who was an evangelical most of her life, but she left the church partly because she disagreed with its views on women, but said she struggled to find something to fill the void. She wants a place to express her spirituality that aligns with her values. She hesitated before saying, I haven't found satisfaction. That scares me because I don't want that to be true. Yeah, I think there's also like a lot of pressure that people put on themselves, or that religions put on people, or that society puts on people. Like, if you leave religion, well, prove that you're happier. And it's like, it's not really like that, you know? Like, yeah, I mean, that is kind of the goal. I think most people would like to be happier after making a choice, but like, there's just bigger things going on, you know?
Yeah, it's like hitting someone up a week after their divorce and being like, "What? You're sad? You're just sad now? Well, then you probably had probably made a bad decision." It's like,
yeah,
grief happens, and you learn from it and grow from it. Yeah, and that's a process that takes time.
Really like speaks to like the quality of a set of spiritual beliefs if they can kind of just be like gone one day. If you like, I feel like like gratitude is a great example of like a spiritual mindset philosophy that I'm tethered to. And like, it'd be pretty hard to imagine kind of waking up one day and being like, I've realized that gratitude is actually wrong and I shouldn't do it. But that it's like, because the nature of religion is such a like specific, like Mormonism being the perfect example of such a specific story that like relies on so much storytelling that can easily be debunked. It's like, yeah, like of course people are going to really struggle losing that, because that's just a brutal, like, I just think a better versions of spirituality can't do that to you, if you know what I mean. Like, your beliefs can morph and transform over time, you know what I mean? Like, even within something like Christianity, like, I think there's totally a way that someone could go from being like a dogmatic Christian to a more sort of universalist Christian who's using Christianity as kind of their anchor story, and it doesn't have to be this like devastating loss of faith, although it's okay if it is, like, you can't help it if you like no longer believe a certain story. But yeah, I do just think like all of it is just brutal, and it's like we almost have to make peace with the fact that for a time, or maybe even forever, you just kind of have to make peace with the possibility that like, yeah, maybe you won't find something that replaces religion. What do you want to do about that? Like, for me, the answer wouldn't have been, I'll just go back to Mormonism then.
No,
like, because I just didn't. But there's people who do have that in them, and that is the solution their brain comes up with.
Yeah, we've seen it.
And who can fault them, really?
I know a few I could fault.
Nuns like Mrs. Mahoney, that's Erin, who we just met, aren't necessarily going back to their previous faiths. Many say they left religion because they moved to places like major cities where people were more hostile to it. They felt uncomfortable or embarrassed about that part of themselves. Yeah, I mean, you got to have some like specifically antisocial beliefs, I feel like, for that to come into play. I mean, maybe people are just like dicks if you say you're a Christian, but I feel like generally speaking, people don't really care if you're a Christian. They care if you have like some belief you're tying to Christianity that's like hurtful to people. Or, but I don't know what her experiences was there.
Well, if you are taught that everything is persecution and that people hate Christians and that this godless atheist liberals are just waiting to devour you the minute that it becomes any more legal to hunt Christians in the street more than it already basically is.
It's like, we are anti-hunting and we always have been, so... I mean, Erin like did leave evangelical Christianity because she found it to be sexist. So it's like, yeah. Others cite a misalignment of values. They left religion because they disagreed with something in it politically or socially. They said they still felt that way. And in today's political climate, it can be difficult to be part of a group that doesn't align precisely with your personal preferences or the identity you've created for yourself. That can make the kind of obligation and faith that religion so often requires feel especially difficult. I mean, that's really true. I feel like the way the internet funnels us algorithmically and everything's got more polarized, like, it really has created this weird expectation that we all have about like how much humans should agree with each other, even in their own in-groups. Like, I was reading a Substack article this morning about how a lot of the time these days people will have a parasocial relationship with someone, like an online writer, and then the minute they have like one little belief that's like different from them, because they form this parasocial bond with them, they're just like starting a fight with them in the comments. And I think like we've seen that, like it's totally fine when people just comment and they're like, hey, disagree with you about this, here's why. But sometimes there's just this energy that people have of like, how dare you have that one slightly different thought than me and that one thing.
I feel that toward sometimes, like...
Yeah, it can be disappointing because you like imagined that a person...
Richard Dawkins posting turf stuff. I was like, okay, bye. I don't care what you've done. Like, see ya. I'm not interested in you as a person anymore.
That feels more intense of an example than like, you know, sometimes just like on our mushroom video, I feel like that's one that has been drawing a lot of like random strangers, and just the way they'll be like so irritated by some small thing that we said because it's like not quite how they see taking psychedelics. People get really precious about like, if you're going to take psychedelics, you need to do it this way and this amount and it's just like, what? Why we got to be like that? But yeah, I do feel like just increasing polarization generally, largely because the internet has like probably also like made a lot of congregations like more political when they previously weren't. Like I feel like Mormonism has obviously always been conservative, but it does feel like there used to be the ability to be a Democrat in a way there isn't now. But I don't actually know because I wasn't raised in it.
Yeah, it definitely depends on where you're at. I would say like coastal metropolitan areas are much more liberal,
something about the sea
California
air makes a church let you be a Democrat.
Yeah. And yeah, maybe, well, I mean, back in the day, they were straight up like communists, but...
Yeah, Mormonism has had some intense messaging.
But in recent years...
Not being a liberal, yeah. Many nuns have had a dawning recognition that they had thrown the baby out with the baptismal water, as my colleague Michelle Cottle said. I would love to find a way to have what I had then without compromising who I feel I am now, Miss Mahoney told me. Okay, that's Erin, the ex-evangelical. I would love to find a way to have what I had then without compromising who I feel I am now. That's a totally understandable feeling. And it does also, like we already kind of talked about, the ways that we're hoping to reclaim something that perhaps can't be reclaimed. And maybe the problem is that you're looking to recreate that in a more similar way instead of like opening your mind up to more possibilities.
Yeah. Again, like, what if I just set up my house and got a stranger to come in dressed as Santa Claus and to leave toys for me, and then I can wake up on Christmas morning and recapture the feeling, oh, but I never will be able to, because deep in my heart I know that that's just not real. But you can say, okay, well, what are the elements of that made it exciting? The anticipation, gift giving in general, like a show of concern and goodwill towards someone or for me.
Imagining that it doesn't matter that my father doesn't love me because Father Christmas does.
Yeah. Cole.
Reclaim it. Like Miss Mahoney and many other nuns, I too feel stuck. I miss what I had. In leaving the church, I lost access to a community that cut across age and class. I lost opportunities to support that community in ways that are inconvenient and extraordinary. When the baby arrives, the moving truck comes, or grief overwhelms. I lost answers about planets. You did lose answers about planets leaving the Mormon church. That is true.
I lost answers about planets,
like,
about Kolob.
Study planets, babe.
I can't even mention Kolob among my astronomy friends without catching flack. I've just had to let go of this whole ass planet.
I'm like, girl, you can truly reclaim having answers about planets in a way that is way more,
beyond.
Yeah. You can't even imagine what there is to know about planets.
Remember Co-Star?
I still find it odd to move through the world, going to the gym and sending Slack messages with these questions threatening to overtake me. Shouldn't I be dumbstruck constantly? Shouldn't we all?
Yeah, maybe that, like, the feeling of being at work and being like, what is all this for? Like, being a human and the weighty philosophical questions before us are so huge and so prevalent, and the majesty and terror of the world so gigantic and unfathomable, really, that how do we go day to day just doing these mundane things and pretending that it's like making widgets in the factory that gives us a sense of belonging and purpose and a full human life.
It's interesting because she's saying, shouldn't I be dumbstruck constantly? And like, she's saying that she's kind of not. She's like sensing that, like, isn't it kind of crazy that we're just going to the gym and like we're on Slack when these big questions exist? And like, she's right about that, but she's also kind of speaking to the fact that she is somewhat able to function. It's just that these questions exist in the background of any life if you haven't found satisfying answers. But it's a good point. Like, shouldn't we be dumbstruck constantly? Like, there's a lot of ways that our modern life is making us blind to like what's most important and what's most real. and like numbing us to a lot of the just like important stuff that humanity needs, like true intimacy, connection, belonging, purpose, meaning. But I don't feel I can go back. My life has changed. I enjoy the small vices, tea, wine, buying flowers on the Sabbath. That were once
Mormon
off limits
vices
to
really
me.
go so hard.
I like that it says buying flowers on the Sabbath, not just like shopping on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
Because it's just a lovelier sentence. But also I love the thought of the Mormon church specifically having an issue with that. Most importantly though, my beliefs have changed. I've been steeped in secularism for a decade and I can no longer access the propulsive, uncritical belief I once felt. I also see too clearly the constraints and even dangers of religion. I've written about Latter-day Saints who are excommunicated for criticizing sexual abuse, about the struggles faced by gay people who want to stay in the church. I recognize, though, that my spiritual longing persists, and it hasn't been sated by secularism. I want a God. I live an ocean away from that small Arkansas chapel, but I still remember the bliss of finding the sublime in the mundane.
Still so possible.
Yeah, that's
bestie.
interesting, because I feel like finding bliss in the mundane is easier now. Because like the mundane takes on a different quality when you're not needing it to just be like some insignificant background detail in this larger, grand, war-based story.
Yeah, when the mundane becomes the point that like experiencing, again, consciousness, like when I feel my most aligned and spiritually embodied, as it were, like that's when I feel that. It's like, oh my God, even just the little moments of being alive is so, so precious. And on my deathbed, would look back on this and be like, did I fully enjoy this? And I want to do that. I want to live that moment with the end in mind. And that's why I'm choosing to spend this waking moment talking to y'all.
And we're grateful for it.
I just wonder if she's done acid and if that would solve a lot for her.
Yeah, the elephant in the room is like maybe psychedelics queen. But it's like recognizing that your spiritual longing persists is not a bad thing. Like that is just an indication of a need that is not being met. And I think your job is to get out there or get in there and like explore and have curiosity and like do away with these blueprints that you've left behind, because like that was one form of the thing that you were looking for, but clearly they weren't it either because you left them. Like it's not necessarily a problem to be like in the spiritual desert, to be in a space in your life where you're like, there's nothing. What do I do? It's like, that is still like, that's fertile ground. This is why I feel like having sort of a, I don't know what the way to say it is, but like potentially like a Jungian perspective on life or like an archetypal lens can be really helpful. Mm-hmm. Or like a lot of cultures throughout history have had like fairy tales or various cultural stories that can like help in moments like this. She's describing like an archetypal human experience of feeling like spiritually unfulfilled. And like there are answers for that, and you maybe haven't found them yet, and that's okay. The question is not like, obviously this article's been about like, so do we kind of need religion? Like my answer is like no. And then it's interesting because she says, for years I haven't been able to say that publicly, but it feels like something is changing, that maybe the culture is shifting, that maybe we're starting to recognize that it's possible to be both believing and discerning after all. But I
prefer discerning.
That.
I don't think like you do have to just form some like light beliefs to operate in this world. You got to believe that the sun will be out tomorrow, because like it would just be there's enough data for you to safely make that assumption. You have to believe that, life is worth living, that you can make changes to improve your circumstance, little things like that, maybe could not be true. Maybe the sun doesn't come out. Maybe you die tomorrow. Maybe your life will actually spiral worse. Like maybe that will happen. But those beliefs are helpful. But even then, it's like I just want to hold those all so lightly.
Yeah.
That even to call them like a belief, I believe in God. It's like, what does that even mean? It's not really useful to me.
Well, and it's interesting because it's like, she's just said like, my spiritual longing persists. It hasn't been sated by secularism. I want a God, but she hasn't found one. So she's saying like, maybe we're starting to recognize that it's possible to be both believing and discerning after all, but she doesn't seem to be believing. She seems to desire belief because that's what she thinks will fix the problem. But I feel like this brings us back to the whole like, our culture is alienated from the value of mystery and like wants to get away from it, because she's saying like, I want a God, I want certainty, I want some kind of specific, and it's like, perhaps the problem is that you want that kind of certainty rather than becoming comfortable with mystery. And like embracing mystery doesn't require belief. it maybe
Yeah.
requires kind of a sense of belief in yourself and your ability to be discerning in some ways.
I don't believe in God. I just am God, you know?
Yeah, you just feel them everywhere all the time.
Yeah, you're just a focal point of consciousness, and that's it. Like, you're doing it.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for that somewhere else, I don't know. I saw a great tweet today that was like, everyone who's, constantly reading self-help books, knock it off. Start reading poetry.
Yes, or fiction.
Yeah, or fiction.
100%
bring art
agree.
into your life and realize that it's not just like this endless fixing and changing of yourself, but getting in touch with poetry and mysticism and realizing that these questions aren't new. People have always been dealing with this.
Yeah.
It's not a new topic. And when you go into the arts and into myth making and poetry and all that, you're like, you find communion with the people who have been doing this all along and reckoning with that and creating beauty as a result of it.
It's also interesting, and I totally did this too, so this is no shade to Lauren, but the Western impulse to feel unfulfilled, like a lack of meaning, spiritual attunement, whatever, and to be like, I want a God, like me, I instead of just like a more of an impulse to go out and make meaning through helping others, through serving others, through contributing to something bigger than yourself. It can be kind of it's, and I really am not throwing shade because it's so relatable, but it's kind of self-interested to be what's the set of beliefs that's going to fix these difficult feelings I'm having, instead of how can I contribute meaningfully to the world in a way where I'm potentially helping others to have less of those feelings of isolation and, poverty of various kinds. I don't know. I also am just really confused by her confusion, her conclusion, her saying, I want a God. My spiritual longing persists, but then she's like, oh, but maybe we're starting to realize it's possible to be believing and discerning. It's is it
But
for
you're
you?
showing
But
that
you're
you don't.
showing, you're saying it's not.
Because you don't have one.
You're just saying that people are going back to Christianity because times are hard, and of course.
Yeah.
And you're also kind of speaking to presumably what's driving a lot of people to go back to Christianity or whatever religion, that spiritual longing. And yet, I don't know, it's just kind of a weird conclusion. And also, I haven't been able to say that publicly. I mean, you have. Perhaps you didn't feel comfortable saying that because religion kind of creates this expectation that you almost want to come across as really happy and fulfilled because you don't want to give any credibility to religious, Mormonism's notions that if you leave, you'll just be miserable. But it's that is still, that sucks that the culture does that to people, but it is also kind of a personal problem. It's still valid to be out there saying I left religion and my life is hard and I haven't found a sense of spirituality that's feeling great yet.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's been okay.
Alan Watts shared a Hindu story about God and consciousness, that God could just make endless things, and for all eternity could just make whatever he wants. Well, after an eternity, endless billions of years, finally would have made everything that there is to make and would eventually get bored and would either say, okay, I'm going to go to sleep and just let my consciousness dream up whatever it wants to. I kind of step away and step into the chaos, as it were. Kind of that, the Christ metaphor, as an avatar for God, God, the all-knowing, inserts itself into a singular person to kind of cut themselves off from that holistic being and knowledge to experience individual identity. And that is the ultimate impulse that God would have, was to be okay, let's just see what happens when I let go of the reins and surprise me. And then here we are, woken up in the world as a conscious individual, being surprised by our own creation. We are still a part of this process that is creating us. And now we are awake and dealing with that chaos and uncertainty that we as God awareness would have longed for in eternity. And now we have the question of, what do we do with it? And I think most people aren't actually ready for or desiring of that state of being, of realizing okay, if I were God, if there's no God and I were God, what would I do? Mm-hmm. We don't really want that freedom. We want someone to tell us what to do. It's much easier. But
I just wrote about this on my 9th Rising Philosophy Substack last night about
God,
how
no wonder you're
most people are terrified of freedom. Like they think they want it, they claim they want it, they speak about it. But freedom, like true like ability to choose for yourself without any stories or like shoulds in your, like people don't want that. People want a God.
yeah, a system
And
to
that's
plug
not
into.
bad, but I feel like this is why the final stage of James Fowler's Stages of Faith is kind of like a universalist mindset, because religions like Mormonism like train you to be siloed and to be like, this is like the Mormon beliefs and this is this group split, and you know which one's right, which one's wrong, which one's when really it's like every religion is like just coming up with stories to speak to certain human impulses and needs and feelings, and there's so much more universalness between all of us. Like we're all connected in the fact that we don't know a lot of stuff and that we may never know a lot of stuff. And like the way that monotheism or trains people to like just to need some concrete answers, I just think is not good. I think it sets people up for this kind of spiritual misery.
If we look at the hero's journey of Adam and Eve and look at the allegory as like representative of life, we all start out as children in a state of innocence and this idea of perfection and purity. And eventually we get kicked the fuck out. We grow up, we deal with complexity, we make choices between varying sets of pros and cons, not just between good and evil, but like a bundle of good with some evil and a bundle of good of some, it's like, it's a mixed bag. And you're out in the lone and dreary world, and you got to make sense of that. And there's no going back to the garden. You're never going to get the genie back in the bottle.
Yeah.
You're never going to close Pandora's box. Once you become an adult and you become aware, you become aware. And that's the knowledge of good and evil. And you become aware of your own death, and that's going to happen. But again, that's part of the human experience and part of the human spiritual experience as well. Because instead of like, oh, how do we get back into the garden? And doesn't everyone miss the garden? When does something great when we were just, out naked in there? Like, what if we just try to get back? And 23% of Americans are voting to go back in the garden. Let's just get back in there.
Maybe we can have being in the garden and not being in the garden.
Right, exactly. It's like, how do we make a new garden? Yeah. And I think it might be.
And are you gardening? Yeah. What seeds are you planting? Try out some seeds you think you would like to plant. See what happens,
Like become a creator.
Yeah,
and
that's the thing. It's like our whole frameworks for spirituality have made us like spiritual babies. Like we don't have we haven't developed our personal sense of spirituality and like our spiritual intuition.
Yeah. And I think I might be misattributing the concept to Emerson, who is a transcendentalist philosopher in American history who was not a Christian, but like a deist of sorts. And I believe it was him who had this idea that religion is something that needs to be recreated every generation, because religion is created. The rituals, stories, and communities that are created are to address the needs of a particular people in a particular place in time. So if you're trying to go back to some perfect way of dealing with issues in the Bronze Age, that's not going to prepare you to deal with life today. And so what we always need is a reimagination of the myths and the stories that we tell ourselves and each other. And I think there is a need for new myths and new stories and new rituals and new ways of processing grief, of coming together, of focusing on our transcendent ideals and ethics, and it's happening. And we just have to have the courage to step out into the darkness and to create something that hasn't been created before, to go within and find stories in our own souls and in our own hearts and from our own experiences that can be brought forth to elucidate the human situation in today's world, and not just like scouring the graveyard of culture looking for bones to reimagine as this long dead father that will make everything right.
Tana, you could be number one on philosophy substack. Honestly. I also think if you've been conditioned for a long time, if you've lived for a long time with these really dark lenses on your eyes, and then one day they're gone, it's going to be really fucking bright and hurt a lot. I say this is someone with blue eyes who has a real struggle with daylight. That takes some adjusting. But it's like, perhaps the problem isn't needing to find a new pair of glasses you can put on that will take you back to that. It's like, how can I relate to all this new light? How can I become comfortable in this new situation? Like, instead of being like, I don't like this, give me a God back. It's like, how about you figure out how to just be in that like spiritual desert for a while? If for no other reason than like, you're a writer, so it will give you more compassion and insight into being a human who struggles, as we all do. I mean, there's a lot of value that can be found in like our dark nights of the soul, you know? Like, you got a viral New York Times article out of it, which is pretty sick. Like,
and for what? Which a lot of people deal with is like, even in, you know, great artistic or business success doesn't quite give them the thing that they were hoping for, which is often just to like self-love and acceptance and peace in the moment, and like a gratitude for the present as it is, and not in the seeking of something external. I don't think the question is, do we need religion? It's, how do we tell better stories?
yeah.
How do we come together in more meaningful ways? How do we create new rituals that are connect us with the world and with each other?
How do we promote more loving behavior? I mean, Christianity is supposed to be a religion rooted in compassion, right?
Yeah.
It's like that. Yeah, let's take that and let's run with it. Like, how do we functionally do that?
Yeah, even the Christian story, I think, is one that has been evolving for 2,000 years. It's not this static thing that's like, ooh, the greatest story ever told. It's like the greatest million stories that's ever been told, because people have been changing the story since day one. And the one that we got, 50 to 200 years after the death of Jesus, I guarantee you is nothing like what actually happened to the Aramaic speaking man in Judea,
which any Bible scholar will tell you.
Yeah, totally.
Dan McClellan, for example.
And the way that that's been interpreted, but through Catholicism and onward, and then reinterpreted by other people speaking other languages, like, the story is constantly changing. And even the story of Christianity will continue evolving and changing. And that becomes, behooves those belonging to Christianity and embracing these more universal, more progressive versions of it to tell a better story about it. Someone asked us on it was a comment I made on, I forget the name of the TikToker couple. We've done a response to them on here before, who did the Kendrick Lamar song, They Not Like Us, and was like dancing outside the temple. It was like, they not like us.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, it's even funnier when you realize, when he's like, hide your little sister from him. And it's funny when you realize that Joseph Smith married multiple sister partners.
It is funny when you realize that.
It is funny. But then someone was like, are you Christian? And I was like, what does that even mean? Did Jesus save me?
I'm not Christian.
The pursuit of Jesus saved me from religious orthodoxy, from religious attendance, from oppressive systems and ideas, from self-righteousness. Like, it was the pursuit of Jesus that gave me that and gave me my life and the freedom and love and everything that I enjoy today. So am I a Christian for that? I don't know.
Yeah, I could.
Like, I could be by a definition, just depends. But that's the thing, is it's all semantics. And so what's the story that we're going to tell about it?
It's so true.
There is a communal feeling in realizing that this is something that's a process that's been happening all along. And then that there's people who have wrestled with these, like, with change and insecurity and evolution, while the rest of their society is like, we need to go back to when things were perfect.
And that feeling of like, I want a God, feels like a very Western, like, I'm having an unpleasant symptom, what's the pill that's going to fix it? Instead of like, what's my body telling me right now? What wisdom is there that I can sort of tap into about what my body needs? And, there's a lot there.
Yeah. But I do totally understand the desire, especially in really tumultuous moments, to be like, if anything's listening, if anything's working for me, if there's any field of consciousness that's just has a little edge, can give me a little something, like if I could believe it and even seize the placebo effect in this moment, I'm gonna really try. Like, I get it. The world is really, really fucked.
And I appreciate a writer just being honest like that. It's like, because the fact that she was honest has created this article, and then that's now the reason that we're talking about it. And I assume that there are people who are watching who are not as far along in their reconstruction journey, or like left Mormonism recently, who could potentially benefit from hearing people who, it's like she's in telling the truth which is also a big spiritual value of mine. There's so much value in that, even if like one person doesn't ever have all the answers, you know, everything just like sparks. Again, things are interconnected and ever transforming and evolving. And that is just like a healthier, more realistic way of looking at everything than, you know, these more like categorized, siloed things. Yeah. Am I getting too abstract?
No, I think, sense? And I really don't, for sure she's not like, we need to believe in Elohim or Jehovah again. Like that's not surely not what she's putting down. I have felt that exact thing. And I just feel like I found what I was looking for and just realized it was like within me. And it's a state of being in a state of mind more than it is like finding the mysterious person out there who will fix everything. Yeah.
And there's a lot of wrestling that has to, like, we come on here now having done like 10 years of wrestling with these kinds of questions and pretty serious full-time wrestling
because
a lot of people kind of the nature of our
just trying
work.
to get through the daily grind and routine of living, and like it's like who's got time to that's why I'm like we're like nuns and monks. We're this is like what we're doing.
Honestly though, like we've sort of like set up our lives, and well, it's like there's a reason we're like drawn to doing this work, and then there's a reason it all just makes sense, right? We just like need all different types of people in society, including people who have been in that place of spiritual unfulfillment and can, you know, can't just like hand you answers on a silver platter, but can just say, like, hang in there, stay strong. There are our answers, and perhaps some little perspective tweaks could be helpful, or perhaps this, and you know.
What are we but two fingers pointing at the moon?
Yeah.
Just two demented twins pointing at the moon. But we're not the moon.
Who's currently no contact with us for reasons we don't want to talk about, but we are going to win her back. Well, I really liked this video. I thought it was kind of nice to talk about all those concepts, especially as lately it's been a real like rubber meeting the road situation lately in terms of my spiritual practices, beliefs, approaches. And what I've been finding is actually like, I'm really happy with my spiritual life. Like it actually is enormously helpful when I need to kind of lean on it more. And
Thank you, Lauren, for writing it. I'm sure we could have a great conversation in real life.
I know her. She actually seems like someone we would love to chat to, because she has been doing this project called Believing, about how we experience religion and spirituality now. And she works to understand sharply divergent perspectives and represent them with nuance, humility, and empathy.
Love all those things.
Gorgeous, yeah.
I can hang.
Also, I was going to say, like, she said she was born mid-90s, so presumably she's like 30. And again, I feel like because we don't, not again, I haven't said this, but like a lot of people don't have wise elders these days. That's something, that isn't like super available to us just because of a lot of different factors. And I'm like, I think sometimes when I'm struggling with stuff, I'm just like, Sam, you're 32. And I think if like a 60-year-old version of yourself or like a 60-year-old wise woman came to you, she'd be like, this is all normal and okay. And like, it's okay to be confused. It's okay to feel unsettled. Like these are all things that move you forward, whether you realize it or not. Like presumably for Lauren, writing this article has like moved her life forward in some way, has opened up channels of communication with people that perhaps have stuff to say that is valuable to her. So this is all fine.
Yeah.
Like we can accept the situation of the moment.
And I really think people need, especially ex-Latter-day Saints, just need to sing with people more often. That's such a big part and such a big emotional part of the whole thing. Certainly was for me.
Well, we have a meeting in 13 minutes, so I think we should wrap up here.
Cool.
But you should join our Patreon if you liked this video and want to support us in making more. We're also about to read the final chapter of 10 Issues Among the Nephites, a Mormon fiction book we've been reading for like 12 years. And then we'll be moving on to other stuff, so that'll be cool. And we really appreciate all of you who do support us, and all of you who like and subscribe and comment.
And tell your friends and bring it up at every social gathering. That really means a lot to us, even though you shouldn't be doing that at your own father's funeral.
Supper club.
Your supper club.
All right, well, goodbye.
Love you.
Love you all.